Hey, it's me.
She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelicalish.
All right. Yeah, I know. You want a new open for 2025, but I got other stuff going on right now.
I'm actually now getting really into it. Like, you should have seen me jamming out just then, listening to that music. I've got like a whole little choreographed routine that I do when I'm off camera waiting for the thing to end. So no, it's all good. It's all good in the hood.
Nice.
Hey, this isn't our first 2025 show,
Second,
is it? We've
second
had one.
2025 show. Yeah.
Great. We have broken the seal on 2025. And
you may note I have Paul Swearingen on the screen instead of at Unconventional Pastor Paul, because I forgot to change it, because I now have to do all this Paul Swearingen stuff as I am in my master's program online and am now a student and a teacher again. So life is lifing again.
Congratulations.
Life is lifing again. Yeah, it's cool.
You are 3 days in to being Professor Paul and Student Paul.
Yes.
After not being a student for how many years? Like 40 years?
Well, I had to take one prereq to get into the master's program.
That's true.
But other than that, it's been, let's see, I graduated from college in 1988 because I'm effing old. So, yeah.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, that's like kind of, the big news, I think, in our household and kicking off the year. And of course, we were supposed to be on Friday of last week with a special show. And at the last minute, had to get that rescheduled. And I got at least one message from someone going like, I'm on YouTube right now. Where are you? And I was like, we had to bump that. So we'll bring her back.
Yes, our guest had something come up that she couldn't avoid, and so we lost her. And I should have sent out an email to everyone saying, so you've got to be on the email, and next time I'll actually send an email saying, sorry, we're not going to make it.
There you go. That's a good little reason. See, this is why people should sign up for the Pastor Paul newsletter.
Evangelicalish.com.
That too. Or that. But Alex is here from Brisbane. So glad, Alex, that you can join us. And
what do we say? Good day? If I said good day, mate, that would be like really stupid, wouldn't it?
I would love a response from Alex on that. Would you be offended if Paul said good day, mate?
And what would Alex say to an American to be like stereotypical American if she?
Hey, y'all. I think she'd say, hey, y'all. Don't you think that's
hey, y'all? Yeah, there you go.
People outside of the U.S.
Y'all got a hot dog or something like that.
Yeah. But listen, we're in California. I know the geography is not always easy to follow. It's an enormous state. We are miles and miles and hours away from the LA wildfires. And yet, as we sit, there is not a conversation, person like on the top of everybody's minds everywhere in our region is like, oh my God, what's going on? What are we going to do? And what are they going to, it's just nonstop. So we're going to jump into that topic tonight.
Yeah. I've had quite a few
people. We are safe,
in
case anyone's wondering.
Yeah. I've had quite a few people across the country reach out and say, hey, are you guys safe? And our daughter doesn't live in Southern California anymore. So we're fortunate because she went to school in Malibu and it took a hit, and it's just really terrible, tragic stuff. And, we're fortunate not to have these wildfires really here in Fresno because we're down in the valley, but we've experienced a lot of it, and our firefighting crews, as is happening now, a lot of crews are going down to help in LA. I even saw a crew was up from Mexico.
Yep.
Open borders, I guess.
Yeah,
open borders,
international response now.
Yeah. And it's being politicized. We're hearing all kinds of crazy things about LA. So we thought we need to get somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about to come on and talk to us about what's really happening in this, terrible moment in Southern California.
Which I feel like is just a great contribution to the ish audience, because we are usually not afraid to talk about stuff that we don't know about. We will offer our opinions up on anything. So you're welcome to the listeners, whether you're live with us or you're listening to the recording or seeing the video. Like this, we're just really grateful that we have a friend and former colleague who is exactly the person that we wanted to talk to tonight. She is Kerri Donnis. She is the former chief of the Fresno City Fire Department, chief for 10 years. I think, Kerri, you told me earlier today, a firefighter for almost 30 years, retired recently. But Kerri, you've seen it all. And I'll let you say more about this, but I recall when I was mayor hearing a lot about how the city of Fresno, 110 square miles, and all of the county islands that you all had to step in and help cover, one of, if not one of the busiest urban firefighting forces in California. So you have led the troops at a very, very high scale and large scale. And we're glad you could joining us tonight from the Central Coast. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Which we're super jealous about, because we were just there and had to come back home.
Well, thank you both, Paul and Ashley, for having me. Happy to be here and join you both. Almost 10 years if you add in the interim fire chief time. 27 with the Fresno Fire Department, which it was a great opportunity, a great privilege to be the chief of that department and to watch that department grow. I feel for everyone that's going through that right now down south. Fire is horrific, and when you combine fire with wind, that is just the worst combination.
And not to get us too far off track here, but it always stood out to me when I was at the city, like learning more about the history of the city. It was firefighting that actually brought the city together in the first place. And in 1885, it was the recognition that, hey, we could probably like keep our barns from burning down better if we incorporated and created a city. So this whole, we have to all be in it together to protect ourselves from fire in the city of Fresno. And it's probably true for cities and local governments across the world. Like, this is actually the central issue that oftentimes mobilizes people and creates communities in the first place.
Yes.
So it is a deep spiritual thing that people have chosen to come together to support each other through fires. And now here we are dealing with the big mess in LA. So I wanted to...
Can I interrupt real quick? Just to note that again, in case anybody didn't catch that. Communities, cities, towns, and ultimately cities came to be because they needed a fire department. Just taking care of the neighbor's barn wasn't working, and so they needed people who I guess volunteer and then is that true, Kerri?
That is correct. That is correct. In fact, Fresno was one of the first volunteer fire departments in the country, for sure on the West Coast, which then eventually became an incorporated, career fire department. But firefighting is such a public service, servant's heart profession. And, when we have these big conflagrations like you're seeing, and we had it in our backyard with the Creek Fire, it's not, it happens, and it's happening more and more, obviously, with climate change, and not just on the West Coast, but all the other things we see with tornadoes and hurricanes and what have you. But fire departments have this mutual aid system in place in California. It's very robust, and which means is we just cross borders and city lines, and they set up a system that they ask for more help, and those cities that can provide it, or districts, or whatever they may be, send the resources that they can. And that's why you're seeing so many resources being flooded down there, because they're coming not only from California, but other states, and now Mexico and Canada, and just a very impressive mutual aid system that we have.
Ashley, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but that is just significant point. I
No,
thought I
I
wanted to
know.
make sure we
I'm
really
glad
spent
you.
time on that. Yeah.
I'm glad you made us stop and like pick up that nugget. Like consider the sort of DNA of how communities, cities, local entities are formed in the first place. It is more often than not out of recognition of like we got to work together to protect each other from fire. And then we'll talk about it as we go here. But then like to get into this nasty rhetoric, and we kind of had fun naming this topic today, facts not fox, like to see this important function and response being like taken and just like dragged through the mud is really concerning, to say the least. But I wanted to start, Kerri, I'm sure folks who are listening are just curious about, from your professional perspective, kind of color commentary, like on the sidelines watching, like what are we seeing, what stage of this massive event are we in, would you say? What do you like, kind of what do you think is coming immediately next? Like let's kind of break that down for us.
Sure. Well, just kind of what I've observed and just the experience of, this wildland interface that we have a little bit of it here in Fresno, but let's back up. We had a drought for so many years, and then we had this flood of water for the last two, which allowed things to grow quite well. And then I would say that, the last 6 to 8 months, it's another drought. Which now that stuff is so dry. Then you combine that with 90+ mile-an-hour winds and a little spark, right? Whatever started the fires. That's still to be determined. Um, that's a mix that is not going to work, and you're not going to stop that without some type of aerial firefighting force, which cannot fly in those winds. So it's just free burning. And they try their best. Those firefighters, are trying their best to stop where they can. But I mean, you could see those embers flying and how that fire was moving so fast. It just burned itself right to the ocean.
Are they
Mhm.
getting it under control at all? Do you know now, or is it
It
still,
looks
they're
like
just still
they're
letting it
getting
happen
some
here?
containment on
Okay.
in some of those fires. Some of them they've put out, which is great, because they had the wind die down and allowed those planes and helicopters to get up in the air and just paint, fire retardant on the fire and or ahead of it, so they could, get around that. Um, some of them are still obviously burning, and because the winds keep kicking up, and those winds will just dump that fire just 3 or 4 blocks down the road, and it'll start another fire, which starts another house or two, and so it's a very busy time trying to chase all of these fires down and to try and find a containment area
So
for
what,
those.
walk us through like what is what is the command center like when you're dealing with so many different jurisdictions, such a broad geographic area? Like how, like is it just well known in the firefighting force, like so and so, like this agency is always in charge, they run out, like how, like what are the layers here? How do people know what to do and where to go and where do you put the planes and all that sort of
Sure,
thing?
sure. It is called a unified command, uh, which means all the players, whether it be sheriffs, water department, the mayor's office, fire departments, all have representation at those, because it's not just fire and police. I mean, there's so many other layers. They need trash, and they need all kinds of city entity or departments to be involved in helping mitigate this emergency. And so it's an incident command center that's away from that fire area, and they provide direction to the leadership is out in the field and set up in battalions or in divisions, based on how they have structured that particular incident. And they give direction on when these when the drops might be coming, particular time of day. Everyone's communicating in a very structured way, but that's the way the incident command system is designed. And firefighters have been trained on that for years, and that's why often they take the lead in that type of system.
And is it CAL FIRE that is in the overall lead, or like, because there's, and again, we'll talk about it a little bit, there's a lot of criticism coming the way of the mayor and the LA fire chief. And it's like, that's not the top of the funnel here, right? Like this is a much bigger regional situation.
CAL FIRE is in there, but there's Los Angeles County Fire, there's LA City Fire, there's other adjacent fire departments. It could be in surrounding areas. Then you have the folks that are coming in from other states. They have to be assigned to certain divisions. So there's a lot of players involved. There is ultimately one incident commander, and then there's several other operations chiefs. There's planning section, there's logistics, and so they're setting up hotels and sleeping areas and food and all those things just for the firefighting forces.
We were acquainted with a person that worked in logistics for CAL FIRE, and it was really fascinating to hear. I mean, you don't think about it, but yes, these firefighters have to have a place to sleep and take showers and eat. And there has to be a way to get food to them and all of those things so they can keep doing their job. So there's a whole bunch that goes into it. But I was wondering about that does Palisades, where we see so many tragic videos, do they have a fire department in Altadena, or how much of that is covered by LA City Fire Department or LA County Fire Department? Because it does seem the critique is all on LA City's mayor and fire chief. And it doesn't seem like they could possibly be responsible for it all.
Well, that's kind of hard to answer. I'm not for sure, but I looked at a map today and there's quite a few. It's like LA City kind of carves out a space, and then LA County's around that. Hang on.
It's okay. We caught you at a difficult time.
I'm worried that the smoke is getting to San Luis Obispo County, where Chief's at.
Why don't we take this moment to play a video just about some of the politics that has been going on around this? And Ashley, I am beyond angry. When there's a school shooting, what do people say? Don't politicize this moment. It's a tragedy. Don't make political statements about guns or anything. Yet here we are. And this is what we're seeing from Republicans about California in face of this tragedy.
In a social media post referring to the governor as news scum and writing, he is the blame for this.
I expect that there will be strings attached to money that is ultimately approved.
I think there should probably be conditions on that, Dave. That's my personal view.
Before we put funds into place, we've got to find out exactly how we're going to hold these leaders accountable.
This right here, ladies and gentlemen, this is the leadership of the LA Fire Department. I sure hope they know what they're doing.
Should other states be bailing out California for choosing the wrong people to run their state?
We shouldn't be. They got 40 million people in that state, and they voting these imbeciles in office. But they are just overwhelmed by these inner city woke policy. Unless they show that they're going to change their ways and get back to building dams and storing water, maintenance with the brush and the trees and everything that everybody else does in the country, they don't deserve anything.
Wow.
I hate to see that.
I do too. It makes my blood boil.
Yeah, during the middle of the most adverse tragedy, we're now going to make it political and tie money.
Right.
It's just sad. It's so sad.
I heard, that was Tommy Tuberville there at the end, who's the former Auburn football coach, who's now a senator for Alabama. And I said before the show, we're talking sometimes I have found football coaches not to be the most impressive genre of human being on the planet. And I saw a statistic this week. Alabama, for every dollar they send into the federal government in federal taxes, they get $2.17 back in aid to their state or their citizens. California, on the other hand, for every dollar we send in, we get 49 cents back from the federal government. So we're underwriting that, excuse my language, Kerri, that asshole's state. And he's saying that about a tragedy in our state. It makes me beyond angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex in the chat is making the point that Mike Johnson in Louisiana, they've had $7.5 billion in disaster support. I was talking to a member of Congress today who actually put the number over the last couple decades. Louisiana has had over $120 billion worth of federal aid that has been needed in Louisiana for hurricane relief. So, yeah, I think this is like these guys are in a glass house if they want to start throwing rocks there.
Yeah, and so, Chief, we didn't bring you on to talk about the politics of this, but when you hear that, like, if we raked more, would this fire not have happened? If there was, if we cut down a few more shrubs, would there not be this fire going on in California right now?
Well, I think there's some would argue that there needed to be some vegetation management, but that's true, probably in parts of throughout this state. Like I mentioned earlier, you had drought, growth, drought again, and then combined with a unprecedented wind event. You're not going to stop that fire. You're just not. It's could they have done some things differently? Everyone will Monday morning quarterback that. I know people had rhetoric about there's no water. When you're flowing 1,000 gallons a minute from all of these engines that are deployed in the hydrant system, and Los Angeles has a robust water system, a very good one. Now, I understand one of the reservoirs were not full or if not empty, but for repairs, but that has nothing to do, that's not the fire department, that's the water department, which isn't pointing blame. It's just they were under a maintenance repair situation and no one kind of planned on that. So
Right.
yes, we had wind events that
And is
come
it,
up.
sorry to interrupt, but is it not the case that we're supposed to be beyond the fire season, and this is kind of happening out of fire season, or am I wrong about that?
Well, yeah, this is supposed to be the rainiest time of year,
Yeah.
right? So
Sorry,
yes,
Siri
they
is
knew
talking to me here.
Yeah, they knew winds were coming, but well, you're just not going to stop that type of wind fire driven conflagration. Plus, you probably have open mains, in homes that are being destroyed, just free flowing water, which again brings that pressure down. So yeah, I'm sure there were some hydrants that were pretty dry when you have 10s, 20s, 30, 50, 80 fire engines trying to flow water throughout the city.
So you're saying LA has a robust fire department. They have a robust plan for fires. This just swamped it,
Oh yeah.
overwhelmed it.
Yeah, this wind event is, I mean, it's that's so difficult. You can't fight that fire with 90-mile-an-hour winds. They do have a robust fire department. Do they need more staffing? I'm sure they do. I mean, we went through that here in Fresno too. Not that there's, they still don't need more, but boy, we had to make the case as well why we weren't sufficiently staffed to manage the call volume that we had. And so are people going to point fingers about that? Yeah. Is it fair? Yeah, they probably need more resources. But it comes down to funding and what is funded and how the council, if they have a council there and chooses to invest their funds. But would 60 more firefighters have been able to put that out? No, I don't think so. I think that wind fire combo that wasn't going to stop it. It's the aerial putting water from above in big volume that's going to stop a fire like that. And then it allows firefighters, which are much needed, to then contain it and surround it and then really put them out.
Can you imagine a world where, because let's assume that 90-mile-an-hour winds, while unprecedented now, are no longer going to be. So, they're only going to be gustier. Those incidents are only going to be more frequent. Is it possible to imagine something like, I know this is ridiculous, but like a military jet of some sort that could in fact deal with the winds, that like we're changing out the air apparatus up there because we now need something that can go through hurricane strength winds? Is there even such a thing?
I haven't heard of such a thing, honestly. I mean,
well, and who wants to try to skim water out of a body of water in 90-mile-an-hour winds? I would think that would be fairly dangerous, I would suspect.
You also have to imagine that, let's say it was releasing that fire retardant in 90 mile an hour. That's not going to be effective.
True. Right. It's just going to go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So interesting. Okay. Ashley, can I ask you, Ashley, real quick? We all make choices on deferred maintenance on houses and cars and like, oh, that's not likely to happen. And you had to make these executive decisions as well for a city. I would bet every state, every local government is making decisions on like, yeah, if this happens, we're in deep trouble because we have to pull back some money here, but we don't anticipate that's going to happen. I mean, would that be fair to say?
All I can say is local governments. Okay, local governments, maybe state governments, and essentially governments other than the federal government that can print money. And governments in low-income regions like Fresno and in the Central Valley, you are on a knife's edge all the time. You are operating and trying to provide city services, police, fire, other utilities, transportation, every single service delivery unit, except for probably people sitting behind a desk at City Hall, they're at very dangerous low levels of service. And the debate, and I'll put this to Chief when she can get back on, but the big debate, one of the many big debates that we have when I was at the City of Fresno was always around expanding our boundaries, pushing urban growth, suburban growth out farther and farther and farther.
Yeah.
Developers who were always funding the political office holders, historically center right, but now in Fresno, they just fund everybody. And with their single interest of annex more land so we can expand the service limits of the city, we were trying to hold the line, and we in fact did hold the line on our urban growth boundary in the city of Fresno, but everything presses against the city to expand. And in our case, in Fresno, the danger there was like, my God, you are sacrificing services for everybody because, just adding a new neighborhood doesn't create enough ongoing revenue to pay for the ongoing service and maintenance cost. And then the developers are squealing like stuck pigs if you say anything about fees needing to go up to build in the capital expenditures needed to serve that area. They turn into they're like Democrats, one day, the government should be paying for this. And then the next day they're like, no fees, no fees. And in our case in Fresno, our danger of expanding the boundaries was not so much, and now we're getting into territory where humans really weren't intended to live, and it's questionable as to whether or not we should be building up there. There are areas outside of the city that I'd say that's probably true, but not in the city of Fresno. Ours was more just we're devastating services for everybody who lives in the existing boundaries. So I know, Chief, you were brought in all the time to be like, well, if we expand here, can we provide service? And you're like, we need fire stations, we need, rigs, we need staff. And, the math just didn't work.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry too, this cough.
Yeah, we're sorry too. I hope you're okay.
The challenge too with firefighting is you can't just hire one person. You need 3 minimum, preferably 4, times 3 shifts. So they're on 24 hours. So it's very expensive. But you touched on it, Ashley. It's not just hiring people. It's having quality resources that your engines, you're not rolling so many times that you're just rolling the wheels off because they're just not built to drive 5,000 calls per station per year. That's not how fire engines are built. However, we did that for a long time in Fresno.
We did. And honestly, we were afraid we couldn't pay for the gas. That was
Yeah.
I mean, we were down,
Yeah.
this was during the Great Recession. And, you know, we were kind of like, we have enough money for like one payroll, like 1-2 week payroll period in the
Yeah.
bank. And
Yeah.
it was very, very, very touch and go. Our service levels, I mean, the number, I shouldn't try to quote numbers because it's been a while and I don't want to say something wrong, but it's like something like 714 firefighter, like that comes to mind. Like we got down to, or maybe that was police and
That was
fires,
police.
but we got down to dangerous levels of like, are you kidding me? We are running this
Yeah.
fire and police department on this thin level of resource.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're out of that. They're coming out of that now. So that's
Well,
I've heard.
better for the city.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy that some of these politicians we just heard from, you know, represent people who are like, yes, unfettered growth, just grow, so we can build more houses. And now are like, how come we weren't prepared for this? I mean, some of this, Chief, has to be, I always, you know, are we just building houses where we shouldn't be building houses? And nature is like, okay, you know, build a house there, but you're going to be sorry.
No,
And,
that's
we're
true. I
seeing
mean,
that.
that's a good point, Paul. I mean, we are building houses up in the urban interface, and it's beautiful, but you're surrounded by a lot of dry timber and foliage that will just take off if you don't have the right perimeter. And that wasn't the case down there. I mean, it started up in the mountains, I believe, the Palisades one, but um, like I said, it's once it gets going with that type of wind event, it's just ripping through those neighborhoods. There's no firefighter you can force that can get in front of that and just put up a mass of water and think it's going to be effective. It's not. So you have to make sure that your firefighters are doing things safely because you want them to go home at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. And moving power lines underground is a big thing too. That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Oh, very helpful. Very helpful. Because
And
you
very
kind of all
costly,
comes
of
to a
course.
stop unless they can get that electricity turned off. I mean, you can't be walking around power lines, and we have that happen a lot here. Power lines come down during the middle of a house fire here in Fresno, and boy, that's a that's a big danger for anybody that's trying to fight fire with water and walk around on the ground.
Yeah. Golly. Oh, no kidding.
And if those lines are being blown around and they spark in a dry place, that you got yourself a fire. I believe that was the campfire, right? That PG&E had to pay big bucks for that.
Yep. I have just like one more sort of technical fire kind of question. Then I wonder if we can pivot a little bit to this rhetoric we're hearing taking aim at the sort of woke leadership and that being the fault of the fire. But so last kind of like nuts and bolts question here. So fire is going to eventually be put out. Can you talk a little bit about what is then involved with removing the debris and like dealing potentially with mudslides, et cetera, A, and then B, when something burns this much, is it true that you don't have to worry about repeat incidents like in the near future? Like how long before, I mean, is it at the very least, is it like, okay, so we got done with that for 100 years, or is there still a threat that could come with, changing weather and extreme climate incidents and all that sort of thing?
Well, I think it is a good point. You have burned off a lot of the potential fuels that started the fire that would come down, and you're going to rebuild these homes. These homes are going to have to be rebuilt with sprinklers. That's, the state law, and that would be helpful, right? Wouldn't have necessarily helped in this particular event, but so I think there would be a less likelihood of a fire happening again right in that area, in the immediate future. Tell me again, what was the first part of your question again?
What about the debris? I mean, at this scale, what is the cleanup operation going to be like?
Well, this is also what part of that incident command, mutual aid, everybody, all hands on deck that come in, and you have a whole logistics section that's all they'll focus on is getting in resources, likely from other parts of, not only the state, but other states to help with, front loaders and, taking this debris in trucks and just removing it. It will be a mass operation in and of itself. So that will take some time, but it sounds like they're trying to get in front of that now by bringing in resources, stage them, and be ready to go.
Okay, I have a more broader question of just what is it like to run into a building that's on fire, or like go up on the roof of a building that's on fire? How does a human being do that?
Well, I don't know if anybody was on a roof or running into any of those buildings unless it was like in a smoldering stage and they were trying to rescue someone. If you
I'm just
notice
talking in
most,
general. I know we had a
yeah.
firefighter fall through a roof, right? And we lost a firefighter here in Fresno that way, right?
Well, it's funny. That's part of that servant's heart that when you don't plan on that in this career, but you're signing up to run in when everyone else is running out. And we really tried to change that and do it in a safe and measured way. And what I mean by that is it used to be, many, many years ago that, and hopefully that sticks, is that you don't need to run in and save four walls and a roof. People have insurance. You want to do that if there's a rescue and a savable life, they're all about it, and we'll do that. But if there is no savable life and or there is no one in there to be rescued, we don't need to be putting anybody on the roof when fire's already blowing through the roof to try and save what? To save what? And so that was kind of a change in philosophy and thought process and thinking more about firefighter safety versus just at all costs just go running in. So, I think that's measured. I mean, we'll always take risk when there's risk to be taken to save a life. And that's part of what firefighters do in their profession.
Wow, it's amazing. This has been such an incredible tragedy, and then this time of Ring doorbells and indoor security systems, I've seen so many videos of people watching their houses burn down. It's just so sad, and part of why it's just terrible that it's been politicized, and a lot of this critique from, I would say, maybe right-leaning media has been at the fire chief of LA. And I put together a little video of some things they're saying about this that's representative. And so let me run that real quick for us here.
Right here, ladies and gentlemen, this is the leadership of the LA Fire Department. I sure hope they know what they're doing.
I think everybody in the LAFD management is a lesbian who is bragging about her lesbianism, proud of her short haircut and short stature and inability to rescue men. Let me just get it straight. Christina Crowley, first LGBTQ fire chief. Then under her is Christina Kepner, first lesbian assistant chief. Then under her is Christine Larson. They're all Christine or Christina. She's also a lesbian.
The object of this is an assault, a never-ending, relentless assault on white men, white Christian men that has been institutionalized throughout the United States of America. And I don't know why it's controversial to talk about this at all.
I almost have no words. Obviously, you've faced overcoming some of these challenges in your own journey. What does that make you feel to hear this called a DEI fire by some of our leaders and some of our media?
It's, the first word comes to mind is just weak. It's weak rhetoric. It's just, let's look over here. Let's make up some hooey, silly talk. Look, the leadership of the fire department, she is very qualified, came up through the ranks, had to test for that position, and testing for our fire chief position, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mayor, is not just a nod, talk to you a little bit and it's a nod and you get the job. There's like a whole vetting process where you might interview with a panel of city leaders or community leaders or both, or on and on. So you have to, go through a big process to even be considered to work at that level. And so,
Well, and this was true for you, Chief Donnis, but like a big factor that you listen to when you're in an appointing authority role for a professional executive like this is you listen to the front line of the department, and you listen to the ranks, and you like they will tell you straight, like that, like we will follow this person, we will not follow this person. And in the case of Chief Donnis, it was I was sharing with her earlier, it was, thank God, it was such an easy decision, because when it was time to appoint a fire chief, is like, this person has the experience, the credentials, and every bit as important to those two things, the trust of her colleagues, and people will follow her. And that is exactly that proved to be true. So yeah, people do not land in those jobs because someone had a DEI checklist out. No way, shape, or form. That's just not that's not the way it rolls.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I totally agree. It's funny. I know a lot of female firefighters who are not gay, and they're very good. There are a lot of female firefighters who happen to be gay. It's just kind of drawn to that kind of physical, athletic environment. That's where they're comfortable in. But that has nothing to do with their ability to lead and be firefighters. Very successful. Obviously, they have promoted up themselves, which they all had to compete. Just becoming a firefighter, period, takes, regardless of gender, takes quite the task. I mean, there's a written test, and then there's a physical agility test that everyone has to pass. And our test didn't have any different standard, male or female. It was just one test. Some departments make their test, a little different. And then there's an interview process. And funny, I assigned all of our rank and file, whether it be from management or rank and file, be on the interview panel. You guys picked the best before they even got to our desk at the chief level. So I let them have the first crack at, who do you think would be a good fit for this department? And then they ranked all those folks. And then finally the top folks come to, a list of a chief's interview, which I would have my other deputy chiefs with me. And any chief, whether it be me or any of the male chiefs before me, have what they call the rule of the list. And so they're saying everybody on this list is qualified. And, when they say, they talk about diversity, and I think it is important to have your department try to mirror the diversity of your community as best you can. There is something about having, a female be able to put their hand on another female who just lost their husband, and just put their hand on their shoulder and say, we're here for you. Sidebar, because the majority of firefighting calls are medical in nature. They're not fighting fire. So we're going to all those life-threatening emergencies. Or to have an Asian American go into a Hmong community that, they see someone that they can relate to. So, I'm supportive of diversity in the workforce, but I don't believe any of the women that have been hired, and I certainly bet that these women were hired based on their merits, not on, their gender or sexuality.
DEI is a principle that for many, many, many years, we would say, well, we would love to hire a woman. We would love to hire somebody from the LGBTQ plus community, but they don't have the experience. And so then you would hire a white male, and DEI is like, no, there are qualified people from these marginalized communities, and we're going to give them a shot at it, and I think that's good. But again, it doesn't mean you're hiring somebody underqualified. You're just hiring somebody that would have never had an opportunity to be at the table for that hiring in the past. And
Absolutely right.
yeah, I think that's where people are really missing it on this right now.
Yeah.
And hey, demonizing the LGBTQ plus community has just become a pastime for some of our elected officials and using
it's
them.
easy. It's an
Yeah.
easy, easy one to go after because they don't want to talk about real issues. But
So does a female firefighter have to be able to throw somebody on their shoulder and carry them?
a female firefighter, a male firefighter, all have to do the same physical testing. They go through the same training. They have to move the same equipment. It's so funny when I hear that now. I remember when I was hired in Fresno and I had a reporter ask me that same stupid question. Could you throw me on your shoulder and pick me up? And I had a wise battalion chief say, do not answer that person. Just walk away. So it's just so uneducated about, what firefighting entails, to even get hired. And then what you have to do to continue to maintain your certification and your training with your teammates.
I think it would have been kind of fun to see you actually do it to that reporter. Like that could make for really good TV. We'd probably still be watching that clip to this day and be like, oh yeah, let me show you how it works. Like let's just put it to bed right now. Yeah. I can do that.
No.
All right. Well, we'll set that up and get some video of that, or maybe you could throw
The wise battalion chief, however, probably was the good call there. So.
All right.
Yeah. And last question on that, you fought so hard in some of these spaces. Is it deflating a little bit to hear something like that here in 2024 that we were hearing back in 1981?
It is. That said, and I'm not surprised by the rhetoric that has been thrown about with, this new administration's coming in, and I'm just not surprised by it at all. It's hateful talk. It's let's have everyone look at stupid spinning plates over here, whether it be, LGBTQ or trans or whatever, so we can't talk about real issues because they don't want to talk about those things. So I think it's sad that they used the chief, her assistants as some scapegoat talking point during the middle of a really tragic situation for thousands of people in the LA area. It's just so misplaced.
Well, Ashley, unless you have something else before we let the chief go, we have to tell everyone that she also, other than being able to carry somebody on her shoulder and be the chief of a fairly large city fire department, was a hell of a softball player at the college level for a very good softball program.
Nationally ranked softball program. Yeah.
Oh, loved that time of my life. That was great.
Tell everybody
Long time ago.
Where you played, what you played.
I played at Fresno State. I followed Coach Margie Wright out here. She recruited me at Illinois State, came out here and took the Fresno State job. I came out here a couple years later, and we got to compete for the national title 3 years in a row and took second all 3 years, but I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Oh, we came so close.
Yeah.
So close. Damn UCLA.
Yeah. Arizona.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
you were the perfect guest for tonight for sure.
Yes, thank you so much, Kerri, and thanks for responding to the 9:30 text last night. Like, hey, can you please come on and help people understand what it's really like to deal with this fire and all this other nonsense? No better person to have on with us tonight. So thank you so much, Chief, for giving us your time.
All right, be well.
We'll talk to
All
you
right.
again.
See you soon.
Good to see
We're
you.
going to have to go make a visit to see the chief and her wife, Lori. I'm inviting myself now. We got to go over and say hi because they live in a really beautiful place. So,
And we can never have enough excuses to get to California's Central Coast, which is truly amazing. So we finish up always with our What's on My Mind segment. And this is where you always say, oh, I hadn't even thought about it before. I have to think of something for what's on my mind.
that is actually true, but I want to say something a little different. What's on my mind is just kind of the weight of what the chief was talking about there at the end of the interview, and just thinking about the shoes she's walked in for almost 30 years as a firefighter and leader, and then the fire chief. And I remember before she said yes to the position as the fire chief, City of Fresno, fifth largest city in California. It's a very low income place. The building stock is a very, very old and in disrepair, and low city revenue. So we were always understaffed on everything. So saying yes to the Fresno Fire Department chief job was like, it's really hard, really big deal. And before accepting the role, she came in to sit with me one-on-one, and she showed me a picture of her wife and her 2 kids. And she said, look, before I say yes to this job, I need you to know this, like, this is who I am, and this is what matters to me most. And that needs to be compatible with this job. And I remember at the time thinking, like, yeah, I mean, obviously that, like, it was interesting to me that she felt the need to say, like, you need to know who I am before I sign up for you and you sign up for me. And I think that was obviously a lack of sensitivity on my part, and a whole bunch of other stuff mixed into that, being a Republican mayor and all the things. A perfectly reasonable conversation to have. But I just remember kind of like the quiver in the voice, and that representing years and years and years of that not being okay, it not being acceptable to show the picture, and anyway, so she's just, yeah, she's very inspiring to me.
Yeah, and to hear Christian people say this is an assault on the family, queer rights, trans rights, all these things. How many LGBTQ plus people do we know who have wonderful children and wonderful households, and they love their children just as much or more as any Christian family out there? It's always a question for me: is it malice or ignorance, or some combination of the two? And it makes me so angry. It's just such a dehumanizing way to look at human beings, and for what,
Right.
to be a part of a religious community. It just makes me really,
It's
really
such a
sad.
zero-sum mindset too, because I mean, how like, is it like, oh, if a gay woman gets a job, then obviously a white man's not getting a job? No, I mean, there's so many jobs. There's so many jobs. There are jobs that are going unfilled. Like, it's just really hard for me to go around that logic loop with that dude.
Oh yeah, I think, show me where white men are really not having a chance to succeed in America. I would really like to see that space.
I just don't get it. In fact, when that guy was talking, the clip you showed from the Evangelicalish show, I was like, who is this guy? And I saw his name, and he's got a book. I'm almost thinking I want to read that book just to try to understand where that guy's coming from, because it just does not make any sense to me.
By the way, as you're thinking about reading his book, I cut out the part where, as Megyn Kelly's talking about the lesbian chief and her lesbian staff, he says, and not even the hot kind of lesbians.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that's a book worth reading, but
oh God,
you can
you're
make
right.
that choice for yourself.
Oy, I'm not going to put my eyeballs on it. Anyway, so yeah, that's what's on my mind, is just kind of taking in the weight of that conversation in so many ways, the devastation of the fires. And you said last night, and I don't often hear you talk, I mean, you talk in extreme language a lot, but you said something, you're like, I'm so angry. I'm like angry to tears. And I know what that feels like, to just be so like, there's no other way to express what's going on for you, that like just the tears come. And you said, I can't believe I'm living in a country where this devastation is happening, and our people's government response, representatives of that people's government, is what we're seeing in those news clips.
Yeah, I toned it back because of our guest and didn't want to lose it in front of her, but I am beyond angry. It's just so outrageous for our incoming president of the United States, and he ultimately is the one most responsible because he's the top executive and everybody else takes the flow from him. But angry that, so somebody like Mike Johnson makes me so angry, maybe more angry than Trump, because I don't believe Trump is a Christian in the slightest, or marginal Christian at best. You know, I think he probably makes fun of evangelicals on a regular basis behind their back. Mike Johnson claims to be a high-level Christian man. I have a covenant marriage. My son and I share porn guard software on our computer so we can keep each other accountable. And that fuckhead is talking about withholding aid from California, from Louisiana, where we know the levees didn't hold against Katrina, the way they had forced all these minority groups to live in these particular way, all led to a horrible tragedy that didn't have to be that way. And nobody was saying, oh, maybe we shouldn't give aid to Louisiana because they're awfully conservative, those stupid SOBs. Nobody said that. We're all like, hey, we're Americans. New Orleans is us, and we fix it when it gets broken. And Ron DeSantis state, hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. And all of us are like, oh my God, that's terrible. We get angry at Florida. We hate Ron DeSantis perhaps, but Joe Biden is like, what do you need? We're down there. We're fixing it. I never heard a Democrat anywhere at any high level say, maybe we shouldn't help Florida because they're not very fond of us. And so for this group that claims to be that the GOP stands for God's own party, to want to turn their back on people in need, you're not a Christian. You can be anti-abortion and anti-gay and all the things you think the Bible tells you to be till the cows come home. But if you don't care about the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the economically disadvantaged, those that need a helping hand in a moment like this, I mean, you're a shitty American, first off, but you're not following Jesus. You're not following the teachings of Jesus at all. And it makes me extraordinarily, I could cry. I'm so angry about that. And smug Tommy Tuberville, for him to call anybody an imbecile, by the way, is like, ring, ring, hello, kettle, this is pot, you're black, come on. Unbelievable. So,
I mean, it's
on my mind.
Yeah, like the American response that, maybe we grew up with sort of the tail end of the generations that were like, we can fight all day about this, but if you need something, boom, we're there. Like, I mean, I think when I was younger and probably in my, teens and 20s, like that was the standard. And if you did anything but that, I remember it being pretty weird in whenever Superstorm Sandy hit, and during the Obama administration, and Governor Christie was like, open hand, President, please come and help. And Chris Christie was lacerated by his own party for that.
Yeah.
I was in office at the time, and I remember thinking, who are we? Are you kidding me? Like that, so, I mean, it's really kind of a recent phenomenon. And it's like the wildfires in LA. It has blown up that sentiment that like, oh, now this is the norm. We're supposed to act this way. That's only been like in the last eight to 10 years. So we're not that far removed from a time and a place and a, generation where the positive peer pressure was somebody in need, you show up, you figure it out later. You ask the questions later, like, yeah, did you really have the, okay, you didn't have the equipment you need, like the reforms that come from crisis. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't reforms to come. That clearly can be absolutely on the table. But man, just saying it, one, two, getting attention, positive attention for saying it, and people rooting you on. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. And we're not saying that post-mortem on this fire, maybe that's not the right word to use, I guess, but after the fire is out, there's no question. We need to look at what happened and, is there more that could have been done? We never ask the question, like, should we be building houses here? That is not, you're never allowed to ask that question, it seems, but, we need to ask really hard questions of, what needs to be done as the climate is clearly changing. What do we need to do different as human beings so we don't have, I mean, they're saying this may be the most expensive tragedy in American history. I mean, that's just
I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. I mean, just I can't imagine that it wouldn't be.
The scope of it is incredible.
Yeah.
I want to, if we can end on a good note, if we've chewed on that enough.
I think we probably should. Thank gosh.
As I said, started my second semester of teaching journalism at our local community college, Fresno City College, which I love, which is this beautiful campus. It used to be Fresno State before they kind of went white flighting out to the north end of town. Unbelievably beautiful campus. I love being there. But our daughter was texting me the other day and she's like, how are the students, And I'm just like, oh, this class. Oh, these. Then I said the same last year, right? Oh, the students are amazing. And two classes in with this class, and I'm like, oh, I am so in love with these students. They are the best. Yeah, they're the best. They're amazing humans. One of the students walked in late today, and after class, he came up and he's like, I'm so sorry I was late. I promise you that'll never happen again. And I'm like, man, it's okay. It's okay. We'll things happen, but that's just who they are. And it's one of those things where you always hear, oh, this generation, man, these Gen Zers that I'm hanging out with are some of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I love hanging out with them. We have an hour and a half class. It goes in a minute. I can't believe how fast it's over. And so, yeah, I think I have a lot of hope for the future when I'm gone from this place bodily, that these amazing people are going to do great things if we don't destroy the world before they get able to do it.
And isn't it so freeing and gosh, it's just life-giving to be in a place in your life where you don't have a religious mindset where like you can't see a person because you have to see like, well, are they indoctrinated or not? Are they professing Christ or not? Are they the right kind of, like all you get to do is just like be a human, see another human in front of you. I love being around students as well, particularly college students, because you can just feel the sort of the hunger to achieve and to grow. And, in our community, like in so many cases, it's like first time college goers. But anyway, that light and that spark that's in every single person, and you just get to observe it and see it as this unique, beautiful thing is like so inspiring. So I had kind of a,
well, I was just going to say, and I don't know about this particular class because I haven't asked, but many of the students at Fresno City College are the first person in their family to ever go to college. And,
well, yeah, that's,
there's just so many beautiful stories like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if you are making your way through a community college in California Central Valley, you are doing it it's very likely, no one hired a college consultant for you. Like you are just doing everything that sort of the political world would say you're supposed to be doing. Like you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's what those folks are doing. So I had a similarly inspiring experience today. I'll share it. I know we're out of time, but I got to go to see something called the Golden Charter Academy in Central West Fresno. It's a K-6, soon to be K-8 school, charter school. You can look it up online. It is a phenomenal charter school program, the first of its kind, environmental science for transitional kindergarten through 6th grade, across the street and soon to be co-located with this beautiful public zoo that we have in our community. These kids were, from all walks of life. I think they come from like 30% of census tracts in Fresno. And they start the day with what they call daily affirmations. And they put all the kids go out, line up behind their teachers. They stand on the blacktop and they have this like cheerleader pep rally guy come out, and he's got purple hair and earrings. He's got these cool overalls on and this cool jacket. And he gets on the microphone and he leads them through their daily affirmations. And it's like it's an acrostics for golden. And they go through, and all these little kids, they stand at attention and they get, be whatever, like be golden. And I mean, it just was amazing. And then the little kids are like walking past. We go visit the classroom. The students this was 2nd grade. These students were trained and knew that when guests came in and were standing in the back, these few assigned students got up, walked over to us, said hello to us, welcome to our class. Today we are learning, and they told us what they were learning. And and I'm looking in these beautiful little eyes of this little girl who was talking to me, and she's like, do you have any questions? And I'm thinking, besides the fact that I really don't want to sob in front of you and traumatize you as like a 50-year-old white woman that's like losing it because you are so precious. No, I don't have any questions. I just want to stand here and have a moment. But anyway, so that like that kind of thing is happening in the middle of this world where there's the nastiness, the clips from the video we've been playing. And this was my final point. We were talking about this last night in the kitchen. The reality is this: every single individual in our communities, in our country, around the world, I don't care what people are saying on the Megyn Kelly Show. I don't care what people are saying as they're walking the halls of Congress. I really don't. In the middle of all that, we all have a choice to make of who we want to be. Nobody can make me repeat or believe the kinds of nonsense that are coming out of the mouths of folks these days. I get to choose that. And I believe that there are millions of people across our country that are like, yeah, no, that's not for me. And they're making a choice right now, a subtle choice to be like, nah, I don't want to go in this direction, and give it a second. And I think there's going to be a course correction.
Wow. Love it. Love it. I think the course correction is going to take some calamity, but that's just me. And we know and it could be a both and of some sort. But anyway, so you say the school's going to be at the zoo? We have a kick-ass zoo in Fresno, by the way.
Yes, which is publicly supported. So we passed a local bond sales tax measure for our zoo twice now. And it's like nationally recognized. They have purchased property across the street from the Chaffee Zoo. And these kids once a week get to go over and have this like private learning experience. They're doing plant science, environmental, animal science, talking to the animal keepers, learning about all the jobs at the zoo, from finance and bookkeeping to, animal keepers and all this. And these kids are getting their hands dirty. They're planting things. They're learning about botany. I mean, it's a beautiful expression of like, just remove barriers and believe in these kids and see where they go.
Wow. That is so cool. That is so cool. And I know some people are sort of anti-zoo. We shouldn't have animals caged up. And I get that, but we do it about as well with our zoo here as anybody can. And we've got to had a chance to go behind the scenes and see the elephant, although they wouldn't let us get too close because they say elephants can do you real harm if you're not careful. But and to the alligator place, when we got to see the alligators and all of that, it's really, really cool. And what was that? They were feeding the lions when we were there, right? Was it
the tigers?
Was it the tigers?
Yeah, and they put this like meat blob on a stick and they poke it through the fence. Yeah, it was pretty frightening.
But it requires 2 people because you have to I can't remember exactly why, but you're making sure that the one is not, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was really amazing to watch these tigers. Like, okay, we're eating some meat now. So give us the gazelle.
Speaking
Come
of,
on.
it is time to go have our protein-rich dinner. Shall we land the plane there?
We do. All right. Next week, we have the two hosts of, oh gosh, the name just went away from me. Do you remember? Deadly Faith. Deadly Faith is the podcast. It is a true crime, not a Christian podcast necessarily, but true crime that happens in the Christian spaces. And they're going to be our guests next week to talk about why true crime has taken over podcasts and streaming video and all of that good stuff. And you are going to love meeting these two women who are doing an amazing job. So join us for that live next Wednesday, and turn everybody on to tonight's podcast episode when it posts here in the next day or two. And we will, so that this information can get out to people, and this ridiculousness of, if they'd only raked the forest a little more, this wouldn't be happening. That's stupid stuff. All right. Love y'all. We'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.